Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this live webinar hosted by me, Graham Proud, founder of the Lighthouse Collective, entitled Define Your Global Approach to Claims and Fraud with Data-Driven Intelligence. Today, we will be focusing on an excellent case study with Allianz, in which we will be discussing how centralized approaches across data and operations are key to improving the effectiveness of claims processing and optimizing fraud prevention. Some of the topics that we're going to touch on today will include the power of data-driven intelligence and connected customer views in maximizing the accuracy of claims verification. Also, how integrated data strategies can improve operational efficiency and automation in a way which balances customer experience, portfolio risk, and loss ratios. We will also be looking at the importance of a unified fraud operating model, which is aligned to strategic goals, and how to simplify and align your technology strategy to multi-line and multi-region operational complexities. We've got some great speakers today. Of course, Allianz. We also have Alex Johnson, who's Head of Insurance Solutions at Quantexa, key partner of Allianz. Alex manages the global insurance solutions portfolio. He helps insurance carriers adopt innovative technologies which maximize the business benefit obtained from data and advanced analytics across the value chain. Alex has worked with a number of insurers globally, Progressive included, Allianz, RSA Group, Zurich, AXA across multiple regions, and has also led operational analytics projects within home and auto businesses. At Quantexa, Alex looks to revolutionize the way insurance carriers leverage internal and external data assets for better decision-making across the enterprise. From Allianz, we have Nick Kelsall, Global P&C, Allianz SE. Nick has a proven track record of delivering transformation within the P&C area. He's a product owner of global IT customer solutions with experience in claims resolution at all levels. And Nick is charged with delivering harmonized P&C strategies that directly link to profitability and customer satisfaction expectations, including focus on an end-to-end fraud management at a group level. Also very lucky to have Nadine Sonnenberg with us. Nadine is Head of BI Analytical Product and Applied Data Science at Allianz Technology. Nadine is an experienced leader in analytical solution development, large application implementation projects, and service provisioning. And Nadine leads a business intelligence software development and data science team in Allianz Technology. This focuses on the development and provisioning of analytical services to be rolled out on a large scale to Allianz entities around the world. So to everybody who is listening in, thank you for joining. I would say get your questions in now. We do have a Q&A element to this webinar at the end of the session. You can submit them through the question facility on the platform. And we're going to kick things off just by getting an overview from each of our speakers on the topic area, why this is important to them, why this is a passion of theirs, and their overall feeling around this important topic. So Nadine, welcome again. And if I can pass over to you to kick things off.
Thanks, Graham. Yes, so I've always worked in the field of data and BI. So this is something that is very close to my heart. And now within Allianz, supporting the digitalization of a big company and also driving us towards a truly data-driven company is something that really motivates me every day. So in Allianz Technology, me and my team, we are responsible for building analytical products, such as the group anti-fraud solution for Allianz. And with that, we are supporting the fraud fighting around the globe. So a standardized and truly global approach is really important here. Plus, through AI coming more and more into the picture, our jobs get even more exciting.
Good stuff. Nick, do you want to talk off the back of that?
Yeah, thanks, Graham, and thank you for the invite, and also Alex. and the opportunity to put a jacket on today, so it's very welcome. As Graham said, I work in global P&C, and we define technical excellence across the Allianz Group, represented over 70 countries across the globe. We have a packed agenda, and our business mantra at the moment is building simple products, simple processes that can be harmonized and scaled globally to what we call the Allianz customer model. We also have some standalone initiatives around NatCat, large loss, bodily injury, fraud, and cyber best practice sharing. We're operating, as you know, in a very competitive market across the world at the moment, with many global challenges, not only linked to COVID, but general globalization, digitalization, and climate change. So to stay ahead of our competitors, we need to not only compete on price, but more importantly, service. And something that's, I wouldn't say new to people, but also an enhanced social responsibility on such topics like fraud and sustainability. So to do that, we need to think a bit differently. As Nadine said, we need to simplify, we need to harmonize our IT and data infrastructures so that the defined processes can shape our future objectives, which can then be scaled effectively. And having meaningful data underpinning all of that is what's going to be key to driving that success.
Great, thanks, Nick. Alex, you're coming from a slightly different point of view. Your opening statement.
Yeah, thanks, Graham, and thanks, Nick and Nadine, for joining. For me, the market is adapting so quickly, as Nick and Nadine have both pointed out. There's regulatory change happening all over the world with regards to insurance. You've got things like the whiplash reform in the UK, which is changing the way that people look at claims injuries and bodily injury. You've got similar things happening over in the States. Some of the no-fault PIP states are sort of looking at reforming the entire way they look at liability coverage. And you couple, I think, that market change with the fact that the data landscape is constantly evolving and is getting harder to really understand how you interpret data because it's growing exponentially, the quality of it is varied, the breadth and complexity of it is changing. With the fact that the customer interaction and the customer experience, as Nick and Nadine have rightly pointed out, is a core and a heart of the insurer as an organization. That's a really interesting dynamic, I guess, for us as organizations to partner with the likes of Allianz on helping drive through some of that complexity and help, understand some of the unpredictability that's occurring at the moment, specifically with regards to things like COVID, but also with regards to the sort of changing behaviors of the fraudster and the way that they look to adapt. And it really is finding that balance between how do you protect yourself as an organization, but how do you also make sure that you present yourself in the right way to the right customers and give them a great customer experience. So look, really, really excited for the webinar today, and thank you, Nick and Nadine, again for contributing.
Thanks, Alex. Great to hear from all of you on some of those overarching interests and how you're integrating with this topic. Can we start by talking about big strategy? So if we start with you, Nick, can you provide some insight on the journey that Allianz has been on so far to develop a centralized approach to fraud prevention?
Yeah, so it's been a long journey. I've only been working with the group, the headquarters in Munich for coming on to 16 months now, but there was a community well established before I worked here, which I was part of it in the UK. And we've got a fraud fighting community, which is proactively supported by over 35 countries, which historically met on a regular basis through conferences in the world where we're allowed to meet in person. And that was typically sponsored by a lead country on an annual basis. It's about sharing best practice and having a community. The group strategy to fraud fighting and anti-fraud is defined centrally. So we have a central defined strategy. That strategy is measured, and that strategy is zero tolerance. The reason it's zero tolerance is that we need to protect our genuine customers and our shareholders' money. It's fundamental to what we do, and And put simply, Allianz doesn't pay criminals. But in 2019, given our overriding objective of digitalization and transformation, is agreed that we should look to further improve this by aligning our core data and investing in a state-of-the-art fraud prevention IT strategy that not only can be used cross-border, but cross lines of business, cross product, by turning this knowledge that exists all across the Allianz group in fraud managers, but making that more harmonized with a truly digital platform and digital capabilities, which is going to be vital as we move into a world of more customer flexibility through omni-channel notification, but also in terms of when we go through a journey of more automation and artificial intelligence and things that Nadine and her team are expert in.
Nadine, so we've touched there slightly on the technology side of things. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the tech and how Allianz have integrated and navigated the vast possibilities in this sense into a solution strategy that suits Allianz's needs?
So what we've actually done is we've built a joint team. We formed a joint team out of business and technology experts. And we have sat together and really taken some time to look at and review our product or solution strategy for fraud fighting, for our group anti-fraud solution. And within that process, we have looked at all the requirements that such a solution should cover, and then assessed what is available at the market. So in this process, we have really looked at whether there's one solution out there that could cover all the requirements, and then actually found out that we are already on a good way with what we are doing with the in-house built solution. And that we would just like to complement that for further functionalities with solutions from the market. So during this process, we then decided to complement it with what we call strategic fraud fighting functionality. And that is everything around network analytics and entity resolution. And we've built with that a better, more comprehensive solution, which helps us to fight fraud in Allianz.
Great. Okay. And just building off the back of that again, you know, part of this webinar, we've used the term data-driven intelligence, and that feeds into what you're talking about there, Nadine. Alex, can you elaborate on this slightly and talk about what that means to you and Quantexa data-driven intelligence, and in the context of how Allianz are using that intelligence with claims and fraud?
Yeah, of course. I think it's important to, I guess, scene set why the term data intelligence or data-driven intelligence is important. So IDC and KPMG did do a couple of studies on this last year, and they found that only 10% of useful or valuable data is actually being utilized within insurance decisions, and that's resulting in about 60% of CEOs not actually trusting all of their data-driven models that's part of the business. So that's clearly, you know, a problem, that lack of trust around the data, that lack of integrity about how that data is being used. And then when you couple that with sort of Nick's point around, you know, fraud losses and having a zero tolerance to fraud, when you've got, you know, growing fraud risks, you've got the fact that Coalition in North America have just come out $100 billion US dollars of fraud there, and only 50%, you know, is being detected, you know, and a lot of that is after the fact. It shows that there's a real problem with how to use data to define good decisions to protect yourself as an insurer, but also to make sure that you're processing that good customer. So for me, data-driven intelligence is more than just throwing, you know, data science or more data at the problem. It's really about augmenting the right data for the right use case. It's about connecting the dots between the different data sources that you have available, because actually as an insurer, you already have a lot of valuable data assets which are probably being under leveraged. So just going and enriching that with external data might not actually be the right approach, because if you can't combine the different data sources to get true sort of connected views of the world, then it's very, very hard to make decisions off the back of that. So for me, it's about that, and it's about driving context through that data so that you truly understand, more than just John Smith's your customer on this portfolio, understanding that actually that individual interacts in this way with you as an insured. They might have different addresses, different aliases, different devices. How do you pull all of that information together to have that sort of contextual view about the customer?
Okay, and just off the back of that, there probably is the view that you could almost look at data and the customer as being very closely aligned, in that one describes the other. Data which is truly valuable describes the customer, and vice versa. How do you feel about that? And can you talk on how insurers are building pictures of their customers and how this can be managed across multiple lines and geographies?
Yeah, I think Nick put it really nicely earlier in terms of the important challenge for an insurer, right? It's about providing your customer, your good customer, good service, but also managing your book, managing your capital, maximizing your investment, and ultimately paying the shareholders at the end of it. They're two competing tasks, but ultimately the customer is at the heart of that. Understanding your customer and using data to understand that is really important. So we talk about sort of intent and capability. So that intent around the customer, the landscape, the changing book of business, the changing region adapts depending on what line of business you might cover, what regions you might sit within. But the capability that sits on top of that can actually inform and help support those changing intents, providing what you're doing is you're at a strategic capability and you're looking at the sort of top-down view of what is it you really want to be as an insurer? Who is it you want to protect? Bad book business do you want to be taking out? So, for me, definitely data and the customer start to merge together, and again, that's where that context is really, really important. Is driving understanding not just about who that customer is on that particular claim, but who that customer is as an individual, or who that corporation is when you look at the commercial world. And so that's the building blocks of being able to help support that capability to drive those changing sort of intents across line, across geography. So for me, it's about agility, it's about flexibility.
Cool. Nick, interested to hear your opinion on this, and if you believe actually a single view. I know we're talking about centralized approaches here. So even if a single view of the customer is possible, across different lines of business, across different regions, how do Allianz view that? And can you talk on how your international teams have come together to unify their strategy?
So I think what I'll start off by saying is that we're talking about customers, and it's very important that we focus on customers because we're here to protect customers. That's why we've got an anti-fraud strategy. But let's not forget that about 2/3 of the fraud that comes into our business is from third parties. So that we don't contract them and we don't know of their existence before they get into an altercation with one of our customers, shall we say. So it's important that we have this data that's not just customers focused, but also that there's a prevention model for both sides of our claim spend. Coming back to your question, I think it's a difficult one to answer, right? So in terms of, we're not naive to the fact there's different markets and there's different models within different markets. So the US model will be totally different to the UK model, and then Germany again will be different to Southern Europe in terms of the remedies that customers look for when buying an insurance product, and then call it upon that product at the moment of truth when it's required. I think that said, the principles of what customers want are very much aligned. They want trusted service, they want to be paid out, they want to be paid out the right amount quickly with no quabbling, right? They want to be the contract to respond. And I think having a anti-fraud strategy or a claim strategy that's supported by data improves that customer journey from a positive point of view. So we're not looking to not pay claims, we're looking to pay the right claims as quickly as possible, and data offers comfort in doing that. I think there's also a role here around sort of behavioural economics, around solutions that people want and how they want that solution. And things as simple as just asking customers what they want at the point of sale that we get away from. We're trying to do all this really clever stuff, putting people into buckets, but we can ask questions, store that data, and steer solutions via that route. In terms of your second part of that question, I think today's talk is about how do we drive a cross-border harmonized project effectively. And I think it comes from having a standardized vision and a standardized goal, which I'm proud to say that we work for Allianz, and that is quite a clear strategy right from the top of our organization. And that is defined, that we want to be digital, we want to be customer centric, we want to grow our business. And effectively, the way that we've worked, there's not a single answer as to how we've done this, other than there's lots of communities, there's lots of joint projects, and people are responsible, not just within head office, but also within our countries, that they support us as well on these projects. And I think trust is a big word as well that we need to not forget about. We need to trust our people. And I think we also recruit well into our head office and onto these projects. So we don't just have people that were founded in our head office. We recruit from our countries and we bring them in for standalone projects as well, which enables that cross-border alignment. And then once we're aligned cross-border and we've harmonized, then we can scale quickly. And I think the other thing I would say is that the fraud IT solution, I guess, which is getting most of the topic today, is one of the first truly agile projects that I've worked on, and it has been truly agile. I've worked on agile projects in the past that turn waterfall very quickly due to external pressures or managers wanting to see returns on investments. But I think that's a real credit for Nadine's team to keep this a truly agile project that can implement change quickly. So when we do need to change, that change is implemented very quickly for the needs of our internal customers, our countries, I guess.
Thanks, Nick. I think it makes sense for you to talk about that, Nadine, now in terms of the fraud solution that you guys have come up with and how you've managed utilizing technology, perhaps third parties and internal resources to ensure that remains agile. Nick talks about agility there. Be interested to hear what does that term mean to you, and how is that attached to the fraud solution that you guys have developed?
Mm-hmm. So as Nick rightly pointed out, as I'm from Allianz Technology, for me it's mainly the internal customer that I look at, and we are working in a very agile process there. It's taken some time to set that up, but I think it's working very well now. And there, for us, it's all about co-creation with our countries. So whenever we define a requirement that we want to build up, we do this in a round table with our country, Allianz countries, and then this requirement is being prioritized for development, and we will always have one country to develop the solution with us in a co-creation mode. So we also ensure that we immediately have the feedback based on the country's data, on real data, and we can also see whether it turns out in the value that we expect. So this is how we managed to make it work in a very good way. And thanks also, Nick, for the flowers. I think it's also a perfect combination between business experts and technology experts working in the same team and on the same product. So this way we create a solution that pays off that also contributes to the long-term strategy of Allianz, and that pays off in the same way that also we want to contribute to our Allianz entities' savings and fight fraud in the same way as our Allianz countries do.
Thanks, Nadine. I think it's clear from what you're saying there are a lot of moving parts here. There are different departments involved. There's the technology, there's the strategy side. Of course, the centralized approach demands that a lot of people come together and they agree and they're unified in terms of how they're going to move forward. So, Nick, could you further elaborate perhaps on how this is actually achievable? I know there'll be a lot of insurers listening into this thinking, well, we found this very difficult in terms of aligning all of this strategic thinking and the technology and the third parties, et cetera, et cetera. How's Allianz actually done that over a timeline? It must have been very difficult.
I don't think difficult's the right word. I think it needs time, and it needs a common vision. So we call it a tribe. So all a tribe is when the common people with a common purpose, right? Is what we try and create. The way that this project works, and it's not the only international project that we're operating, is that we have what we call a product expert round, and that's the business side effectively, and that's defining the business requirements of the IT solution. Then we prioritize that collectively. So I'm the business owner, product owner, and then Nadine has a technical project owner within her team, and then we prioritize the backlog, and then the outcomes are demonstrated in sprint reviews, and there's time for feedback, and we continuously have this loop. We release fast. We say quite a lot, we want to test and learn, we want to fail fast and get some as well. So it's a constant learning cycle. But I think the backdrop of the fraud fighting community has really helped this, because we do have this aligned strategy. We're a close community, and there's a real team feel to try and deliver this IT solution.
Nadine, do you want to add anything to that? How do you feel? Do you feel very close to everybody else in the other departments within the Allianz in terms of this centralized approach and how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, so one thing that I can really share is that it's a great experience to work in this agile way, truly agile way, because we've grown together as one team over time. And I think the key here is to really take in the different viewpoints that everyone has coming from different perspectives, and also being very inclusive about everything that it takes, all the aspects of developing such a solution. Organizational, skill-wise, technical aspect, data privacy, architecture, and discussing all these points in one team actually might mean a stretch at the beginning for everyone, but it has also helped this team to grow together and to form this well-working machine, agile team that we are today.
Nadine, we can't go too long without sort of delving into the A word, and the A word being automation. And already I can see from the questions that are coming up a little bit later, there's a lot of niche questions around this. I wonder if you could give us a take from the technology perspective on what's going on with automation within Allianz and what you're working on. And from a business perspective, how have you utilized automation to create better efficiencies, for example?
So agree, the automation is the key to everything that we do today. So we, on the one hand side, we use automation in the way we build our solutions, we deploy them, and also we run them. So our target here is to really have best time to market and improve this as we go along. So this is our main target here in using automation from a technical point of view. On the other hand side, let's also speak about the business side. So within our solution, we actually want to create something that also helps to automate business processes. And one example for that that we created in our solution is what we call on-demand scoring, which actually allows the claims handler to get a score even based on an initial set of data that he or she entered, and would immediately within a few seconds get a feedback: is this a claim that looks suspicious or not? So is he or she allowed to proceed with it or not? And this helps us to actually also speed up the claims process, make it more efficient, and then for that also our, let's say, non-suspicious true customers benefit a lot from it.
Thanks, Nadine. Just bouncing back to you, Nick, and what's evident here, we're talking a lot about two different sides of the coin in terms of technology and strategic thinking. This brings to mind technology versus human expertise and the balance which a lot of insurers are constantly battling with, and trying to find that sort of magic combination of this is the perfect combination of technology versus human expertise in any given scenario. And claims and fraud is very applicable to this big debate. So curious to see how you view that in terms of the tech versus human balance.
Yeah, I think it's the age-old question, right? That people want the golden nugget for, and I apologise that I'm not going to offer that up because I don't know. I'm going to sit on the fence and say that ultimately the way I see this is it's complementary to each other. For those of you on the call that know me, I love a quote, and Steve Jobs once said that the computer is the bicycle for the mind, and they're very much the same here, that they both complement each other. And they need each other to get the most get the most out of each other. One on its own isn't going to deliver the results that you want, and one without the other in the future also isn't going to deliver the results that you need. So I think there's a lot of processes that businesses can automate, and I think the simple idea that to automate everything as an objective, we might have lost Graham off the screen, but to automate all the things that I think that to automate everything from a process point of view, I don't think is the right answer. So what you should do is target your automation. You should automate where that adds the most value. So for simple claims, simple decisions, things where you can use data-led decision and artificial intelligence to do that. But you must not lose sight of the fact where human beings add real value to the claims process in things like being in complex claims, in fraud investigations, and turning data flags into actual evidence, because that's what's needed at the end of the day to find fraud, right? It's just this human process that's ultimately made by human courts and other humans. So yeah, I'm sorry to sit on the fence. I think it's very much harmonious, and that one without the other just wouldn't work or exist.
Thanks, Nick. No golden nugget, but I think you gave it a pretty good stab, so I appreciate that. Alex, to bring you in here as a specialist in this area, and looking slightly ahead, how do we view the future here in terms of an end-to-end decision intelligence or enterprise fraud solution? What would that look like? And what role will data and technology have to play in that process?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I'll say is I'll echo Nick's point around sort of automation. And yeah, I think there's a slight misnomer around the buzzword of automation at the moment, that everything has to be done faster and more cheaply. I think automation should be thought about doing it more accurately and more effectively. So I think if we think about that, then we think about how do we then provide that as a greater customer experience? How do we then provide that as a greater product experience? How do we then look to use that insight to drive, better and more accurate decisions? So I think that's a really, really valuable and important point, I think, that Nick highlighted. I think in terms of the future state or future proofing, for me, it's around 3 areas, and we've touched on some of these already. One is that strategic aspect, having a strategy, and it sounds simple, but actually having a focus around what do you want your claims organization to look like is fundamental to being able to then plug in what are the capabilities or what are the processes that you need to augment that strategy with. Being able to do that with agility, and that's both agility around creating the plan, because the plan will change. If you always have the same plan, that's one that will ultimately not be future proofed and will fall down in the future. So being able to review that plan, evolve that plan, and accept that that plan won't always be perfect, but continuing to review and have that strategy, I think, is really important. And then when you're live with any sort of technology, being able to be self-sufficient. I think, Nadine and Nick have pointed out there that process between technology teams and operational teams only works if you're pulling in the same direction and you're able to sort of be self-sufficient around that process or that capability. And I think the third thing for me, again, is around, I guess, using context to understand that customer. We've talked about the customer, we've talked about them being at the heart of all the decisions, but the fact that fraud and risk comes from other parts of the insurer, right? It comes from the supplier, it might come from the third party, it might come from agent, it might actually come internally. There's always that risk. So understanding the context, the wider context around where does that claim actually sit within my ecosystem of decisions? Not just the fact that this is a claim of this circumstance, of this value, but actually it has this type of behavior, this type of sort of network interaction or network relationship associated to it, I think is really important. So it's about complementing, all 3 of those things and having a plan to bring your operational teams with your technology teams and focus on what it is you want to achieve, and then supplement that with the right sort of capabilities.
Great, thanks, Alex. Swinging this back to Allianz, and again touching back on the centralized approach, because that's the purpose of this conversation today. I can see that a lot of people that are listening in are talking about measuring the success of this, and it's important for individuals and departments to quantify how successful projects are, and in order to move forwards, you need to realize how successful it is right now. So Nick, from your point of view, how have you measured the success of a centralized approach, and how is that going to impact on future strategy?
So I think where I'd start with this is, what if we don't do it? So what if we did nothing? And if we did nothing, then are we living our values of customer centricity, social and corporate responsibility? So I think we always start from there. So not doing it is not an option. Then I don't necessarily measure the success of finding more fraud. Funnily enough, it might sound a bit strange, but we've got a fraud prevention strategy that's 0 tolerance. So we don't necessarily want to find more fraud. What we want is happier customers, and we want to not have not pay out things that we shouldn't be paying out. So it's the same as having an effective leakage strategy, right? So this is money that you want to take off the bottom line, and paying fraudsters is something that you need to take off your bottom line for your shareholders, for your customers, and for social responsibility. So again, it's not about just having one key metric here by just saying more is more, because sometimes more isn't more. Sometimes less is more if you can measure that your fraud prevention strategy is working. If we can get a message out there that Allianz is tough on fraud, therefore you don't target Allianz when it comes to fraud, then that's what motivates our shareholders, our customers, and our internal staff, right, for success. And I think it's about it fitting into the value of the claims process. We can't over-engineer this, which is again why Nadine's team with automation and helping our claims handlers make good decisions that are low impact operationally for our claims handlers and our customers. These are the success factors that I think are vital for any anti-fraud strategy.
Thanks, Nick. That's very insightful, and I think when we're talking about measuring success and long-term strategy, we've got to talk about partners and how they're impacting on that success and that timeline going forward. So be interesting to hear perhaps from Nadine first, on the technology point of view. You clearly formed strong internal partnerships. You've formed great partnerships with third parties in a technology sense, in a data sense, etc. What's the process there? Could you comment on how you go about seeking external partners from an Allianz point of view? And do you have any specific examples of how bringing in a third party has perhaps enabled you to do something which potentially was challenging in the first place, or is quick in that process? Could you comment on that?
Yes, definitely. So our best example is actually the one that I referred to previously already, the enhancement of our group anti-fraud solution by what we call strategic fraud fighting. And here we went out to the market. We looked at all the vendors that are out there offering fraud fighting software and to cover our requirements. So we raised an RFP, started to look at different offers, at different software, its capabilities, and clearly we were looking for different capabilities that this partner should bring. So first of all, definitely state-of-the-art technology that we then decide ourselves for a buy strategy instead of make it ourselves. So the solution should definitely bring a certain maturity there already and be state-of-the-art. But on the other hand side, for us, it's also important to find a true partner that supports us in our strategy, where we can work together in the way that we described it, in a collaborative, agile approach, co-creating the solution together with our internal customers. And I think that's the success here that we've achieved, choosing Quantexa to cover our strategic fraud fighting and building this solution together. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Nadine. And probably makes sense, Alex, for you to comment off the back of that from the other side. You guys have enjoyed a great partnership and that's ongoing. What's been your experience from Quantexa's point of view, Alex, in forming that relationship with Allianz and moving forwards with it?
Yeah, I think recognizing that, you know, although there is that sort of overarching strategy, there are still, I guess, nuances and differences depending on the region, the book, the line of business that might be provided. So, you know, having individual input at a user level, and that's where Nick's point around people is really important, right? What we're not trying to do here is optimize everything and remove people from the process, because data doesn't tell you the whole story. It's about making sure that those individuals are then most efficient and have access to the right insight in the right way. And I think that's something which Nick and Nadine have been able to help support with the sort of top level strategy, but bringing in through those expert forums, the user groups, the different perspectives of different regions, different portfolio managers to be able to manage that insight through. I think that touches on, actually, we've had a question in from the poll around sort of the emphasis of data reliability and the fact that, you know, data doesn't tell you the whole story, and that is exactly right. You know, data tells you part of the story, and then what you need to be able to do is drive insight or context from that data. So it's no good having, you know, a master data warehouse, lots of good data attributes, if you can't actually understand what that's really telling you about the customer, about who they are, about the you know, the network they sit in, or around the sort of the different contributing factors around that, and being able to serve that back to people who can then analyze it, reform it, make changes to it, and input in it in the way that the strategy needs to dictate. So you know, very much this is about empowering people to get best use of data, as opposed to empowering data to make all of the decisions.
Thanks, Alex. I'm keen to get as many of the audience questions in as possible, and I think we've covered a few of them, certainly from the strategic approach and some of the technology questions as well. There's a couple more specific ones, and Nadine, perhaps you'd like to comment on this first one. 2 or 3 actually have mentioned cyber fraud claim, and have we got any case studies or any experiences that you can share on how a cyber fraud claim has been successfully, pulled apart, busted, addressed by Allianz? How do you view cyber fraud at the moment? How is that on your radar?
Cyber fraud in the sense of, can you make an example?
Well, we haven't got an example here. I think that they're looking on in a more general sense to get your take, or perhaps Nick's take, on the advance of cyber fraud generally, how that's developing, what sort of threat does that pose, how are you looking at defending against?
I can talk from a strategy point of view on that. Just briefly, I think the difference between cyber fraud and some of the bad cyber practices we're seeing in the market, things like ransom, for example, I wouldn't necessarily say that's you could argue it's fraud, but it's cyber criminal activity is effectively around ransoms. Cyber fraud is so vast now, in that we've got automated vehicles, we've got intelligence in keys, so there's lots of data and lots of cyber opportunities for people to manipulate and take advantage of, shall we say. Because I'm not actually answering the question, but I think Ben Fletcher, the director of the Insurance Bureau in the UK, used to explain that fighting fraud or insurance fraud is like fighting crime. You're never going to say you've successfully tackled it. It just evolves and changes into something else. And what you need to be really careful of is within our predictive models, which is true machine learning with I think Nadine will correct me, human intervention not within 6 months or something like that. That looks for patterns of anomalies in data. So that can help us try and spot new fraud trends that we didn't necessarily have the foresight to see looking at historical data. But you also need to not be naive to the fact that things change and old data won't necessarily show us fraud trends of the future. So you need to just be open-minded, think like a criminal at times. But the key thing is you need to be able to share things that you see really quickly, and you need to be able to implement change at scale rapidly to prevent this. I think that's the tackle for tackling not just new trends in cyber, but the shift from motor automotive fraud into casualty and property. It's about spotting those patterns quickly and changing, not necessarily having all the answers in your back pocket all the time.
Thanks, Nick. I think that's super interesting. We've got a question here.
I guess I've got a perspective to add to that. Maybe I see, in terms of the digital world and where fraud's proliferating from that, I think there's 2 aspects to that. One is the cyber threat of data theft, right? So if organizations have data around customers, around people, around corporates that's potentially being leaked or is available on the dark web, then that creates vulnerable exposure to that insurer from a sort of synthetic ID, stolen ID perspective. And we're seeing a lot of that within ghost broking in both the UK and in North America. So I think there's a bit there around understanding how that knowledge of data theft and the risk that can be posed from a cyber leak can then impact you at the front end with regards to application fraud coming in. And I think the second thing I would say is that you've then got like digitally enabled fraud. So where is that automation process that you're putting in actually leaving you vulnerable to fraud somewhere else down the line? So if you're looking at a straight through process in claims, you need to think broader than just saying, I'm just going to straight through process the claim that looks like this all the time, because that's extremely easy for a fraudster or a process to be able to understand that quickly and sort of back manufacture that automation, and therefore just keep submitting claims that hit those thresholds and they're going to be paid. So there's a bit around understanding that data landscape, and then a bit around understanding really what is it you're trying to build that process for. It's not about building the process to pay the $100 claim. It's about building the process to pay the good claim for the good customer.
Fully
Thanks,
agree.
Alex. Nadine, did you want to add anything to that before we move on?
Yeah, if I may, I think it's both colleagues are fully right. So fraudsters don't sleep, and they also develop further patterns, which we see in cybercrime or other activity on the market. And the key to that is actually to gather more data on the one hand side, so include further sources, so we can actually also find these complex patterns in the data and identify them. And this usually in the future will only help, will only be able to be done with AI, artificial intelligence. And what we would also then have to make sure is that we at the same time simplify our processes and our systems, so that we don't give so many, we don't have media breaks, or we don't have so many, let's say, entry points to those fraudsters manipulating our data, for example. So this is something, or trying to enter with new patterns into our business processes. I think this is something that we need to make sure, and where we need to include new sources of data using AI, and then also get on the path of these fraudsters in the future.
Thanks, Nadine. Actually, we've got a question which is addressed to the whole panel. The panel has spoken about data and how that can support insurers to provide a good customer service, but this feels quite conceptual. Can the panel please elaborate or give a practical example on how data can directly support a good customer claim service? Alex, perhaps we'll start with you as a data expert, that link between excellent customer service within claims and a strong understanding of data.
Yeah, so I actually think it goes beyond claims, this, right? It goes around how you're onboarding the customer at the start of the process. Let me take a sort of SME example, right? We're seeing in the commercial space, lots of organizations are being set up in COVID, right? I've got friends who set up their own businesses in COVID to do alongside their work. It's, it's very easy to do and set up organizations, but it's also very easy, therefore, for people to do that for nefarious means. So validating ABC Limited that's just come to your business for a policy is much more than just going, I'm just going to check their incorporated address and I can check, on Companies House or whatever that corporate record might be, that is the address. It's about going deeper than that and saying, well, actually, I can see that ABC Limited's director is Alex Johnson, and Alex Johnson acts in this way, and I've seen Alex Johnson here over in this portfolio over here. He's an existing customer. He's been on my book across 2 portfolios. I've known him for 3 years. That's great for me. I've now got a warm relationship with that ABC Limited. I'm going to treat them differently when I onboard them, and then I can treat them differently when they come to claim. So you need to start that process really, really early on when you're onboarding the customer and when you're understanding that customer throughout the life cycle, because then all you're doing at the claim stage is going, is this claim real? Because if this claim's real, I've already been validating the customer throughout their entire journey, so I should just go and pay that claim. And it's not about saying it fits in this box of $100 claim. It's that this claim is real, it's legitimate, it's for good customer, therefore I should pay quickly. So I think there's a lot of advantages there of enriching both your internal view of the world, have I seen this individual before, have I seen this context before, and the external view of the world, can I look at credit bureau data or Companies House data to provide a better context.
Thanks, Alex. Nadine, perhaps you'll have an interesting take on this, just moving on from the link between customer experience and data, but more broadly, technology and customer experience. As a technology leader in a huge insurance carrier, what for you is the next big thing, or what are you concentrating on in order to improve that customer experience eventually from a technology point of view? What's really exciting from your perspective?
Oh, I think you're on mute, Nadine.
Thank you. I was, thanks. So I think on the one hand side, our customers are demanding faster and more digital processes from us. So they want a fast customer experience, easy to handle, super friendly UI. And I think that applies to our end customers, but also to our internal customers, technology customers. So I think the ultimate challenge here is to really simplify the user experience on the one hand side, but at the same time capturing the data in a way that we can immediately provide the feedback to our customers, and that applies to any process. So be it the end customer that types in his claim and actually would like to have a payout confirmation within a couple of hours or 8 hours, whatever it may be in the end. I think that is the challenge that we have to work on, and that also analytical product and analytical solutions can enable in the future, where we should, let's say, not only digitalize, but really also digitize. So shape these business processes in a way that they are super simple and easy to use for our customers.
Thanks, Nadine. It's good to hear a really positive take on technology related to customer service. I think that's the whole point of this. We're running out of time now, so I think what would be a great exercise is just for everybody just to take a minute to address the audience and talk about your bottom line here in terms of what's really important to the insurance industry right now in relation to claims, fraud, centralized approach. From your point of view, what should we be concentrating on? What's super important? Can we start with yourself, Nick?
Yeah, I think just I won't go into what's important for the whole insurance industry, but keeping with the brief, I guess. For me, my key takeaways today is don't let your IT systems dictate your processes. It should be the other way around. So create the holistic process and then get your IT systems to complement that process, and then partner with supply chains that align to your corporate and social responsibility, that have got the infrastructure to interact with your core systems. You know, how many times have we heard that we can't do that due to IT challenges or lack of budget? We need to be in a position where the strategy is focused on good customer experiences, driving expenses, driving spend. And as I've said, I think the IT should complement that strategy rather than restrain it.
Thanks, Nick. Really good points. Nadine, what are your key takeaways?
Yeah, so I've heard a few, and I think I fully agree with what Nick said. So I think we've heard about automation as a key driver for our technologies. We need to build on more data sources. We also, I think, need to keep up with fraudsters in order to, let's say, have all the data available, quickly integrate the data so we can use it. I think that's a key then, time to market as well, and stay close to the business. So I think we need to stay in line with our business strategy to also be successful in our technology strategy.
Thanks, Nadine. And finally, Alex, what are your key takeaways today?
Yeah, I think Nadine and Nick have put it really well. I think two things I would add. One is focus on value, sort of not cost. So if you're only ever thinking about process automation or data from a how do you reduce cost, you are missing an opportunity, right? And it ultimately means you're taking your foot off understanding like the customer and how you treat them correctly, and how you protect them as an individual or as an organization. So I think that piece around focusing on value is really important. I think the second is, I've said it a few times, is context, right? It's not data for data's sake, and it's not analytics for analytics' sake. It's about using specific data points, specific tools to be able to drive meaning behind the data. And I think that is what then allows you to transfer that into a proper, accurate and meaningful decision at the end of it.
Thanks, Alex. I think meaning behind the data is a good phrase to end on. Just want to say thank you to Allianz for being so open and candid and brilliant today in terms of talking about their recent experiences with a centralized approach. I'm sure the audience appreciate that. Thank you to Quantexa as well. You're part of that piece, and it's great to hear how it's all come together. To everybody that's tuned in, thank you for listening, and thank you for your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get through more of them. Do continue the conversation. Look us up on LinkedIn. Get in touch with Alex and the guys from Allianz. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you more on this, and we hope to hear from you again in the near future. So good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Have a great day, and we'll see you all again soon. But thank you from everybody.
Thanks very much, all.